My boss humiliated me in front of the team, so I made sure the board saw his incompetences. I used to think professionalism meant swallowing disrespect. My name is Mark, and for almost a year, my boss Richard made me the easiest target in the room. Every meeting followed the same script. I'd present an idea, he'd smirk, interrupt, and turn it into a joke. Not clever humor, the kind meant to remind everyone who had power and who didn't. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was the silence afterward. Coworkers staring at their laptops. Awkward chuckles that died too fast. No one ever defended me. I didn't blame them. Richard controlled performance reviews, promotions, and job security. Speaking up meant painting a target on your back. So I endured it. I told myself it was temporary. That hard work would speak louder than insults. That keeping my head down was the mature thing to do. And for months, that mindset almost worked. Until the day it didn't. We were in a full team meeting, executives dialed in, when I presented a new strategy I'd been developing for weeks. It was thorough, data-backed, clean. I was nervous but confident, the kind of confidence you earn. Richard didn't even let me finish. He leaned back, laughed, and said, "This is why you'll never move up. Amateur work." The room went dead quiet. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply nodded and sat down. What Richard didn't notice was the moment something in me shifted. Because humiliation, when repeated long enough, stops hurting and starts clarifying. That night, I didn't vent. I organized. I went through everything. Every draft of that strategy. Every email thread. Every comment from teammates who had contributed ideas. I saved timestamps, version histories, and feedback Richard himself had approved weeks earlier. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing for truth. A week later, we got word that the board wanted a detailed update on the department's progress. Richard was thrilled. He strutted around the office, rehearsing his talking points, assigning slides like a director casting extras. When the presentation day arrived, I sat quietly as he spoke. And then I realized something that made my stomach drop. He was presenting my strategy, not referencing it, not crediting it, claiming it. He reframed it slightly, adjusted a few terms, and delivered it as if it had come straight from his own head. The same amateur work he'd mocked was now suddenly innovative. Board members nodded, took notes, asked questions. That's when one of them said, "Who developed this framework?" Richard smiled. "My team, under my direction." That was my moment. Not dramatic, not loud, just precise. I raised my hand and said calmly, "I can clarify that, if you'd like." The room paused. Richard's smile faltered, just slightly. The board nodded. I stood up. I connected my laptop to the screen and opened the original files. The first draft, my name, the date, then the revised versions. Timestamps showing weeks of iteration. Emails where Richard commented on specific sections. Messages from teammates thanking me for leading the work. I spoke slowly, professionally, without emotion. "This strategy was developed over 6 weeks," I said. "Here are the documented versions and feedback, including notes from Richard himself." I watched the board members' expressions change. Brows furrowing, pens pausing. Richard shifted in his seat. I finished by saying, "I'd also like to note that this work was previously criticized publicly as amateur during a team meeting." Silence. Then I added, evenly, "If this is amateur work, then I guess you've been relying on amateurs to run your department." No sarcasm, no anger, just a fact. The room felt heavy. Richard tried to laugh it off, started talking faster, over-explaining, but it was too late. The contrast between his confidence and the evidence on the screen was undeniable. The board thanked me for the clarification and asked me to continue the presentation. From that moment on, Richard barely spoke. Board members directed questions to me, asked about scalability, timeline, risks. I answered calmly, because I knew the work inside out. When the meeting ended, the board requested a follow-up session with me. Richard was dismissed with a polite nod. In the days that followed, everything changed. Conversations happened behind closed doors. HR requested documentation. Team members suddenly remembered things they'd seen but never said. Richard's authority evaporated quietly. No dramatic firing. No announcement. Just distance. A month later, I was officially assigned as lead on the project. Shortly after, I was promoted. Not because I exposed him, but because I showed what competence looks like when it isn't hiding behind intimidation. Richard remained, but diminished. Meetings were different now. He avoided eye contact. Spoke carefully. The punchline routine was over. Respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from truth standing still long enough to be seen. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't react emotionally that day. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to embarrass him the way he embarrassed me. I let his own behavior do the work. Power thrives in silence, but it collapses under documentation. Richard humiliated me in front of the team. I made sure the board saw everything. And when they did, the narrative flipped. He lost credibility. I gained trust. And for the first time in that office, my work spoke louder than his ego. Sometimes the best response isn't confrontation. It's receipts.